All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, however you consume Talking Buffalo. Appreciate you guys so much. Big shout out to our sponsors, Sunny Reds, 1841 Aber Road, just down the way from Highmark Stadium. Mount Rushmore of wings, literally, at least in my opinion. Summer Patio has been kicking. We've had a couple great live shows there. Make sure you go and check out Sunny Reds. And of course, Imperial Pizza with two locations, 1655, Main Street, not far from Canisius College. And of course, in the heart of South Buffalo, 1035 Aber Road, home of the very best lunch special you're going to get anywhere in town. One of the most popular and respected pizza joints anywhere. Make sure you go to Imperial Pizza. All right, folks, I am here recording an episode for Friday. I'm actually shooting this live right now. I am in Rochester, and what an interesting hour or so it's been. Let me give you, if you're listening, if you see it, you might see aesthetically what's going on, the street behind me and everything. I'm on location in Rochester. I was at the Buffalo Bills' final training camp practice at St. John Fisher for the year. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Kind of boring, to be honest with you, the practice itself. But some nuggets definitely worth talking about. So we'll talk about that, some off-the-field stuff, some general camp takeaways, and then I'm going to take a quick stab at my 53-man Bills roster projection now that training camp is over and the preseason starts. Most of you listening to this on Friday. Preseason starts tomorrow at home against the New York Football Giants. So anyway, we'll get to all that in just a second. So I'm at St. John Fisher. Originally, my plan was to record with this little remote setup that I have. Nice and easy to take on the road with me. I can record literally anywhere. So I go to Pittsford Dairy afterwards. Every single practice, by the way, that I've been to at St. John Fisher this year, which is 6, I have went to Pittsford Dairy and I've had a chocolate milkshake literally every single time. No different today. So I go to Pittsford Dairy. Shout out my friend Lauren. She got the Trade Day Sunday. Looked really good. And I went outside afterwards and set up this to do the show. Problem was I was in no shade and it was really hot and sunny. And within maybe 10 minutes or so of recording, my iPad, which has some of my notes on it, and the phone was literally starting to overheat. So it shut down. So that was not going to happen. And by that point, the place was so busy outside, I could not find a good, comfortable, quieter spot to record. So long story short, no show from Pittsford Dairy. I will say this, Bills practice itself, uneventful. However, Pittsford Dairy, it's just kind of becoming the case now. It's such a popular destination for everybody, including the players, which was the case on Thursday. Ed Oliver, Greg Rizzo, Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano. They all come walking into Pittsford Dairy, and you could see. So I was in an area where you really couldn't see them at first coming in, but all of a sudden there's a lot of commotion. Obviously, a bunch of Bills fans there. People are pulling out their cameras and their cell phones, I should say, kind of getting there to window, waiting for them to come in, get autographs, take pictures, and all. They were all pretty cool, by the way. So anyway, yeah, they all come walking in. I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. Trey White, of course, and Christian Benford were there on HBO, and that place just keeps getting more and more popular. But anyway, none of those guys got a Trey Day Sunday, by the way. They are shunning their boy Trey White. They all got milkshakes. But anyway, that was probably more eventful for Bills fans than anything they actually saw if they were at St. John Fisher here on Thursday for practice. Big story before we get in about anything on the field. Like I said, there was no real big story on the field. The big story of Thursday comes off the field and not even training camp practice, but about a half hour or so before it. So James Cook has been a hold-in all week. Him not practicing on Thursday isn't necessarily a surprise. However, Sean McDermott, when speaking to the media at about 9:15 a.m. on Thursday, about a half hour or so before practice started, said that he was, I believe, paraphrasing perhaps slightly, but he said that this was, he was expecting James Cook to be out there today. I found that pretty telling because Sean McDermott would normally say, well, we'll see how it goes. It's a process, yada, 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 yada. He certainly made it sound like he was expecting James Cook to be out there. And one by one, the players start trickling out. Kind of, by the way, if you go to enough practices, you see trends. You kind of know what player is coming out and when they're coming out. Like what players come out early, towards the middle, towards the end. Anyway, every player comes out. No James Cook. No James Cook. So this already was a story, and it's a bigger story now because James Cook did not practice again. Now, Sean McDermott did make a point during his press conference to say that James Cook has indeed been attending team meetings and walkthrough practices that the media and the fans, don't have access to. So it's not like he's completely turned his back, per se, on the organization while these contract negotiations, assuming there are contract negotiations, of course, while they're going on. But again, for me, and this is just my personal opinion, this is a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big deal because Sean McDermott expected him to be out there. And I don't think Sean McDermott gets to in front of the podium and in front of the media, and I don't think that he says that unless he had either intelligence or a conversation with James himself that would give him indication that things were going to change over what they've been over the past few days and he would be out there. But obviously that did not end up being the case. Are they close to a deal? That's the several million per year question right now. Is James Cook continuing to hold in because his team and Brandon Beane and his team they're close and he doesn't want to take a chance of getting injured as a potential deal crosses the finish line, which I said on yesterday's show, and I want to say this again. I think this is important. Running backs especially, you're lucky to get that second contract, a decent sized to big second contract. And James Cook, like all of us who've been at camp and watching practice every day or following practice every day, have had a firsthand look at how many players have been injured for the Buffalo Bills just during this training camp. Now, through all those injuries, fortunately, nothing too significant. Max Harrison is going to miss a handful of weeks. Khalil Shakir, who Sean McDermott did say there's a chance that he could be ready to go week one. But regardless, Khalil Shakir, a week-to-week injury. In a way, the Bills have been kind of fortunate. No ACLs, no season-ending type injuries throughout this training camp. Lots of nagging, annoying injuries, but nothing like season-ending and major. But anyway, my point was, James Cook seeing all these injuries, and the last thing he wants to do, and I agree with this, I understand this, the very last thing that James Cook wants to do, folks, is go out there and rip up his knee as he's nearing the finish line of a deal. So if he's holding in for that reason, hey, I ain't going to hate on him for that. I'm really not. However, and the sentiment that I feel, and I don't have inside information, I'm not trying to pretend that I have sources or anything on this matter, but I just think that James Cook made a decision to come to training camp on time, that he decided to participate the first week of practice, go all out. And by the way, we talked about it several times on this show. James Cook had an absolute electric first handful of days of training camp. He looked great. And then suddenly he stopped coming to camp. Well, at least he stopped participating, I should say. First day he was out there on the bikes, walking around for all of practice. Second day, he made a brief appearance. The last couple of days, you haven't even seen James Cook. My gut tells me that James Cook tried to go the route of showing up and considering it good faith by participating for the first week, that they have not gotten close to what James Cook wants to get paid. And as a result, he's, like he said, he is standing on his business. And that is what's leading to at least potentially anyway, an impasse. Now, national people, Diane Ruzzini, Tom Pelissaro, they've both talked about having, like, whether it's their sense or indication that the sides aren't that far apart. Obviously, you hope that's the scenario because you could say what you want about James Cook. You could feel how you want about James Cook. But one thing to me, if you're actually paying attention to this football team, that's glaringly obvious is while Ray Davis and Ty Johnson are really, really nice complementary pieces who do certain things very, very well, neither of them are James Cook. Neither of them have the skill set that James Cook has. I talked about one play. It was one of my favorite plays of all of training camp, of all 6 practices I've been to. And it was literally just a simple handoff. But James Cook took an outside handoff last week, and he got to the perimeter, and Taylor Rapp tried to get there. He could not get there in time, and James Cook rips off a 12 to 15-yard gain before getting forced out of bounds. With all due respect to Ty Johnson or Ray Davis, neither of them are getting into that corner. And it ends up being a stuff right near the line of scrimmage. So the Bills are a better offense with James Cook. You got to find a way how that happens. Anybody's guess. I guess it comes down to what James Cook at this time thinks he's worth. You would certainly think that the deal that Kyren Williams got with the Rams, 3 years, $33 million, 11 per, $23 million guaranteed. That certainly sounds like a pretty good bar for where James Cook should be. Maybe James Cook, even if you want to argue about stats or any of that stuff, whatever. But if you want James Cook to say, get a little bit more, bump it up to 12. 12 million with about 25 to 26 million guaranteed. That's a little bit more than Kyren Williams. That has to be the max. I cannot imagine a scenario where James Cook is realistically, and his team is realistically taking a look at him and saying, you know what? I am so much better than Kyren Williams. There's no way that I'm only worth 12 million or so per year. So anyway, this continues to be the story of training camp. And it's just weird. And in a way, it kind of sucks because we talked about this all off season. We thought this was going to be the story, but then minicamp came and it wasn't. And then training camp came and for the first week it wasn't. But now it is all over again. So we'll see how that plays out. Josh Allen, I didn't catch everything because I bounced out of the stadium relatively quick after practice, so I didn't catch all the post press conference or quotes from reporters that they got while talking to various players. But I did hear Josh Allen talking about how important James Cook is to the Buffalo Bills and to the offense, and he is. So we'll see how that plays out. But again, the last couple of days, basic James Cook doesn't come out, doesn't work out. Okay, well, whatever. But today, Sean McDermott thought he was going to, and he didn't. So I definitely consider that some news. In terms of other new injury news, I'll get that right, sorry. Taylor Rapp is out for around a week or so. Sean McDermott said before practice with a knee injury. I did watch Taylor Rapp for a while, work it on to the side during practice here on Thursday. No shoes, so I guess he was pulling a Matt Collins, but he did a little bit of bike work, stationary bike, a little bit of work with the ropes. So, he's out for another week. I mentioned Khalil Shakir. Sean McDermott said that he was hopeful, that said there's a good chance, I think something like that Khalil Shakir could be back for that regular season opener on Sunday night. As for this practice, this final practice of Bills training camp, at least the portion that we get to see here at St. John Fisher in Pittsford, I'll use one word to describe it for today, and I'm just being honest, boring. This was a boring final practice, at least in terms of, if you're a fan and you want to see fireworks, well, you weren't getting that today. And that shouldn't be a surprise either. At this point, this team just doesn't want to get any more injuries. They got a preseason game roughly like 48 hours after this practice ended. So they're not going to take any stupid chances, nor should they. No pads, not any real contact. They weren't running full speed for a lot of it. Not a lot of deep throws down the field. There was one, though, I'll tell you about in a second. Probably the most exciting, not probably, it was the most exciting play at practice. Just a lot of installs, some special teams work, some hands kick return, hands practice. Robbins did some punting. Tyler Bass, who did not kick, and by the way, if you want more news, they will be working out kickers by the time you listen to this. Maybe they sign one. They're looking for a kicker for Saturday. Tyler Bass will not kick Saturday, but I did kind of pay attention to him, and he's obviously not ready to kick yet, but good news, he was definitely walking around a lot better. He was even doing some jogging. He went from one sideline to the other, and he jogged. So that's good news, because earlier in the week, he was walking very gingerly, and I thought it was noticeable. But anyway, he's not ready, but he's close, but there will be a new kicker. But anyway, plenty of special team stuff going on. Lots of some install stuff, some inside running, short passes, play action passes, a lot of work to the running back and the tight ends. This was not really a big day at all for any of the wide receivers. The highlight of practice on Thursday, literally the only deep ball attempt of the entire game. Josh Allen, who I'd say more or less had a cameo during full team drills. He took some reps with the first team, but he had his helmet off and he was chilling by the second half of practice. Mitch Trubisky, more on him in a second, but Mitch Trubisky was running first team after that. But anyway, early on, 11 on 11s, Josh Allen tried to go deep, and it was for Laviska Shenault. And Christian Benford, a remarkable play. It looked like it was going to be a long completion to Laviska Shenault, who's obviously trying to make a statement. And Christian Benford came up with a beautiful pass breakup. So that was a highlight. And what was potentially the only scary moment of practice was Trey White was running with them too. And he went down. And he was probably down for about maybe a good 10 seconds. And some trainers started walking towards the field with the Buffalo Bills. Benford's right there. And all of a sudden, Trey gets up and starts doing his handshake with Benford, whatever they're doing, and celebrating. So, I don't know, Trey was just hamming it up a little bit for the cameras, for the fans, having a little bit of fun or whatever. But it looked like for a split second, it's like, oh, no, are you kidding me? Trey White's down. But turns out that he is just fine. By the way, I meant to say this 10 minutes ago. So I lost track. I was talking about the Pittsford dairy story when I left there, and I couldn't do a show because my stuff basically was melting. I am here on, where the hell am I? West Commercial Road. If you're listening to this, I don't know how different it's going to sound. If you're watching this, you can see the traffic behind me. I'm literally on a main street, but most importantly, a bench area with some shade so that I can use my my mobile gear here properly. But anyway, like I said, it was Christian Benford, a pass breakup on the lone Josh Allen deep ball. Probably the physical highlight of practice, this final practice on Thursday. One thing I did notice, and again, wasn't always full speed, and it wasn't 11 on 11 stuff. It was a lot of individual drills, but I'll tell you, one connection that looked really, really good, and I know you're going to like this. Josh Allen to Dalton Kincaid. There is a smoothness, a fluidity right now with Dalton Kincaid that I've noticed, especially since he injured a knee. He missed 1 day of practice, scared the living shit out of all of us, had a knee sleeve on, came back, but he only missed 1 day and he was back the next day. And ever since then, he has looked really, really good. I would not, look, I don't want to overreact to training camp, especially when, he's here barely even being covered. But I'll tell you this. If Josh Allen threw 15 passes, whether they were outs or slants or seam passes to Dalton Kincaid, if he threw 15 passes to Dalton Kincaid, 15 of them, literally 100% of them were on the money. Just looks so perfect when Josh Allen throws the football to Dalton Kincaid. It really stuck out for me. One thing I noticed too, getting back to the injury front, I don't know what's going on as of this recording. I certainly don't know, but I noticed very early in practice that rookie cornerback Dorian Strong, kind of one of the more low-key polarizing figures to me of training camp, because there's been a lot of people that have been very, very high on Dorian Strong, while I've kind of been a little more like, I'm not seeing it. I mean, he's had some really good moments for sure, but I've also seen him get cooked more times than I would like, especially by Keon Coleman. Anyway, he's had an up and down camp, But with Max Searson hurt and Dorian Strong's ability to play special teams, Dorian Strong's 1 gazillion% making this roster. I have no doubt about that. But anyway, practice Thursday, did not participate in any drills, did not have his helmet on. He was out there, he had his jersey, sweatpants, and he was just doing a lot of standing around. I don't know what the issue is. Sean McDermott did not discuss him when he was going over the injuries in the morning before practice. So I don't know what the story with him is. Obviously, he's a rookie, 6th-round rookie, so he's not getting veteran rest days, that's for sure, especially when they're doing a lot of special teams work. So as of this recording, I don't know what's up with Dorian Strong, but that's definitely something to keep your eye on. I did notice and this is a compliment for Dorian, he wants to be a student of the game. He spends a lot of time, and I mean a lot of time, with Christian Benford. And Christian Benford, who we're really seeing emerge we already know he's a great player. We already know he's one of the most underrated players probably in the entire NFL, okay? But we're really seeing his quiet, low-key leadership emerge this year at training camp. I would call that one of the more underrated aspects of Bill's training camp this year is the emergence of Christian Benford kind of as a leader. Anyway, you can see a lot of mentoring going on with Benford and with Dorian Strong. Besides that, I'm kind of going through my notes. I got a little iPad. I was just jotting things down one by one. Some political people of note at Bill's practice here to wrap things up on Thursday. Chuck Schumer was there. Saw Mark Poloncarz, Erie County executive. He was there. A couple other people. And whatever. That kind of bothers me when they're on the field, kind of taking attention away from the players and stuff like that. My mindset, and it's not them, it could be anybody. I don't care what side of the fence you're on. I don't care what politician it is. You want to be a man of the people. You want to be a woman of the people. Get your ass in the stands and watch practice like everybody else. But anyway, worth noting, they were there. But all in all, for practice, a lot of second and third string reps, a lot of second and third string reps. Mitch Trubisky, who's going to be starting on Saturday, was quarterbacking for the first team. Mike White on the second team for the most part, and then Shane Bichelle on the third. It was just cruise control. And I don't blame them. I don't blame the coaches. I don't blame the players. They already got 1 foot off that field. They're looking to get out of the dorms. They want to go to Orchard Park. And by the time you're hearing this, the team will be back in Orchard Park. So, again, in terms of the practice itself, very uneventful, boring. And I knew that. I mean, this is the 3rd straight year I've been to the final practice, so nothing to be expected. But like I said, if you're looking for a highlight, Christian Benford breaking up a pass. A couple things you notice, like Brandon Condrington, I think right now is the firm kick and punt returner. That's one little takeaway that I have from practice. And not that he did anything special, but you could just tell by who was getting reps and when that going into training camp is absolutely Brandon Condrington's job to lose. All right, and I am recording this again, like I said, on location here, somewhere in Rochester. I don't know this town very well, but I'm about 10 minutes or so away from St. John Fisher on West Commercial Road. After I wrap this up, it'll be too late for you guys to show up there if you're not going there already, but I forgot the name of the place already. Matt Perino, Ryan Talbot are going to be at a bar here in Rochester, kind of celebrating the end of camp, and they're doing a live show of their podcast Shout. So I'm going to go hang out with those guys and check it out. All right, my biggest, and I'll fly through this because, again, we're going to have a lot to talk about over the next couple weeks or so before this season, and I don't really need this to be a particularly long podcast. But I did jot down some of my biggest takeaways, not even necessarily from today, but just for all of camp, both good and bad. And we'll kind of go, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you 3 bad and 3 good. These my 3 biggest negative and my 3 biggest positive takeaways from Bill's training camp, the St. John's Fisher portion anyway, as a whole, now that this is over. And I'm the kind of guy who likes to get the bad news before the good news. So we'll start with the negative stuff. Doesn't probably end up mattering, but one thing that has stuck out to me like crazy is Derek Forrest, the safety. I really thought he was going to be something here in Buffalo. I really thought that this was going to be a guy who was going to be very much in the mix to potentially start alongside Taylor Rapp, and worst case, some solid depth, some improved depth at safety, that he would push maybe DeMar Hamlin to be that third safety. Well, guess what? That is not materialized whatsoever. He has had a terrible training camp, quite frankly, at least for everything I've seen. Not a lot of opportunity. He is absolutely going into the preseason. It's not over yet, but going into the preseason, he is buried right now on the depth chart. And even today at practice with Taylor Rapp and Cole Bishop both out with injuries, it was DeMar Hamlin, and again, it was Cam Lewis. So Cam Lewis plays nickel slot, and he's playing safety too. He's that fourth safety right now. Hell, man, I think Couch was even in front of him. Jordan Hancock was in front of Derek Force. And I'll tell you why. There's one play in particular today that I saw. It was I can't remember who the quarterback was. I think it was Josh Allen. Maybe it was Mr. Trubisky. I don't know. But anyway, there was a play action play, and Zach Davidson, the tight end, was he was responsible. Forrest was for him. And Forrest got fooled so bad on the play action pass that Zach Davidson broke away from him, clear across the middle of the field, caught the ball, turned it up for a really nice gain. Derek Forrest just looked completely lost. So he's had a really rough training camp. The 2022 version of him that was a starter in Washington, and a pretty damn good one. It seems like a long time ago. So we'll see if he can change some minds during the preseason. He's going to have to, because in terms of making this roster right now, as things stand, he's dead man walking. So that's one negative. I would stick with that position, period. My second negative is just this position, the safety position. As we leave training camp right now, after 2 weeks or so, my biggest concern with this team, the only real concern I have right now with the Buffalo Bills, folks, not counting injury, my biggest concern is that this team could just stay healthy. If this team is healthy, this is a team with very, very, very few flaws. Now, they're stronger at some positions than others, but this is a team without any real glaring holes in it. But I was worried about safety last year, and it was not a very good position for the Bills. Very inconsistent. Not a lot of plays, not a lot of playmaking going on there. And I feel the same way. We're right back to where we were last year. Cole Bishop, quad injury, should be back. Got to be careful. It was not the same type of injury that continued to linger like last year. But whatever. This guy is the starter. I think he's still the starter anyway. And he's missing days. And he's stacking days that he's missing. That's not good. That's not good at all. So he's got a lot of catching up to do again. And he has opened up the door for DeMar Hamlin to come back in and be the starter. And look, you know how I feel about DeMar Hamlin. He's going to make the play if it's in front of him. He's smart. He's not a stupid player. He's a pretty sound tackler. He's fundamentally sound. He's just not a good athlete. That's what it is, man. That's what it is. He is not an athletic safety. And he certainly looks like, even if he don't start week one, he's going to get an opportunity at some point, because both Taylor Rapp and Cole Bishop continue to get banged up. I really want to love Taylor Rapp. I do. He makes mistakes, but he makes up for it with pretty big plays. But Taylor Rapp just gets hurt a lot. He's injury prone at this point. That's what it is. The last 2 years the Bills have lost in the playoffs, Taylor Rapp has missed both those games because of injury. And he's now been hurt twice at camp. This time he's going to be out for a week or so. Again, nagging injuries. None of these are, potential season-ending or altering type of injuries, at least as of now. But this safety position to me is worrisome, because you got an injury-prone Taylor Rapp. You got a Cole Bishop who can't string enough practices or reps together to be able to trust, because he keeps getting hurt. Then you got DeMar Hamlin, who is who he is. You got Cam Lewis, ditto. He is who he is. Jordan Hancock's a rookie who's been splitting camp between slot nickel and safety. He's probably at this point your fourth safety. And then you got Derek Forrest, who's just been an absolute bust so far at St. John Fisher anyway. So safety is a big, big concern for me. And then This is a nitpicky negative, and admittedly, I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm some kind of defensive line expert. I'll just say this. I've really liked what I've seen from Greg Rousseau. I really like what I've seen from Joey Bosa. I really like what I've seen from A.J. Epinesa. You know how I feel about Javon Sullivan. I love that dude. Give him opportunity. He's going to take the quarterback to the ground. He's going to get you some sacks. I haven't really seen much of Landon Jackson. And again, he's a rookie. Just feels a little stiff to me. I can't really explain it. Again, I'm no D-line guru, and I'm not going to try to play one here on TV. But there just feels to me right now as a rookie, there's a little bit lacking from Landon Jackson. Like, he's a guy, when we start talking about what you want to see in the preseason, I think that's going to be a dude that is like, show me something, because I'm not really seeing it right now. So Landon Jackson would be my third negative. Positive side, I want to wind this down because I want to fly through this 53-man projection and call it a day. And then we'll talk more after the Bills-Giants game on Saturday. But to me, the three biggest positive things I've seen personally at training camp, one, Matt Milano. Dude looks, and that's because I just seen him at Pittsford Dairy an hour or so ago. Dude has played his ass off. Every single practice I've been to, he has been a standout. I think Sean McDermott mentioned a handful of guys after practice Thursday as a standout, and he was one of them. He's been phenomenal. He looks like Matt Milano from 2022. The question, of course, is can he stay healthy? And if he does, I'm telling you right now, look out. Look out. Maybe he's not quite all-pro Matt Milano, but he is, this guy's going to make some plays to win you some football games in the fourth quarter, Matt Milano. That dude is back based on what we've seen at camp. Trey White, another one. I was very, very concerned coming into camp. If Max Harrison didn't lock down a starting job, and it turns out he hasn't. And by the way, before Max Harrison got hurt, he was very up and down. Great moments, rookie moments. Trey White has been rock solid all of camp. He has been sticky. He's been, he's just in on a lot of plays. Nothing looks easy right now going against Trey White, at least from what we've seen at training camp. And keep in mind, it's just training camp. But Trey White, it makes you feel a hell of a lot better about CB2 alongside Christian Benford, say, than maybe 14, 15 days ago. I feel a lot better about that position right now. And then the last guy, again, I already mentioned him, so I'm not going to go into a spiel about him again. But you could see, when healthy, just the way he moves and he catches the ball. Dalton Kincaid, I'm telling you, man, he's going to be a big part of this offense this year. I'm more confident in Dalton Kincaid than I am in Keon Coleman. And it's not me hating on Keon Coleman. I will I will die on the hill of how I feel about Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman is a player who does some things exceptionally well, and then he does some things badly. And for him to be a good player, the things that he does exceptionally well, he's got to do it more often. Good Keon, bad Keon. Make a tough contested catch, make a tiptoe on the sideline, make somebody miss after a catch, take a quick slant, break a tackle, bam, big gain, improvise on a Josh Allen scramble. That's good Keon. Dropping passes when you're wide open, going right through your hands, mental mistakes, mental lapses. That's bad Keon. And I think you're going to see the same this year. Just hopefully you see more good Keon. And you certainly can, okay? I'm not hating on Keon. Keon could be a really good player for this team. But Dalton Kincaid just feels to me, just my gut feeling based on what I'm seeing, I feel like Josh is so dialed in when he throws that ball to Dalton Kincaid at practice. Like there's a potential. Now, Khalil Shakir will be probably the number one receiver, but there's the potential where Dalton Kincaid can become that guy this year for Josh Allen. You could just tell Josh feels confident throwing him the ball. Some of his best balls are going to Dalton Kincaid. Kincaid looks good. He's catching everything. He looks smooth. I can see a big year coming for your boy Dalton Kincaid. All right, going into this preseason, 53-man roster projection. I'm going to tell you, 52 of these for me were almost easy. I got stuck on the very last one here. And I will say that there's two spots that you could put somebody on IR and designate them to return, which I did. So I got Curtis Samuel starting the season on IR where he could come back, and I got Max Harrison on IR where he could come back as well. So neither of those guys will be on the initial 52-man roster. But and I'm going to fly through most of these because, again, most of these are real simple. I come down to one really, really tough decision. Actually, kind of maybe two. But anyway, quarterbacks, two. Josh Allen, and I am going with Mike White winning the QB2 job. It is worth noting, Mitch Trubisky is going to get the first crack at being QB2 because he will be starting Saturday against the Giants, and he will be playing the first quarter with the Bills' first-team offense. Well, at least some of it anyway, because Josh Allen's the only starter who's been ruled out already for Saturday. But I still think ultimately Mike White wins that job. Running backs, Cook, Johnson, Davis, Gilliam. Don't really need to see any more. Tight ends, ditto. Kincaid, Knox, Jackson Hawes, the rookie, keeping all three of those. Wide receivers, I got 5 for now making this team. I got Shakir, I got Keon Coleman, I got Josh Palmer, I got Elijah Moore, although he has been very underwhelming at training camp, but I think he's a good primary or backup slot receiver. He can be a little bit versatile, and he's got some sort of decent track record proving himself in the league. Anyway, he's making this roster. My 5th receiver, Tyrell Shavers. I think he's going to be the 5th receiver, great at special teams, and we know that he can make some plays if he gets an opportunity on offense. So I got the Bills keeping 5 receivers, at least for right now, for the moment. Offensive line, 9. You got your 5 starters, of course, Brown, Torrance, McGovern, Edwards, Dion. Then I got Vandermark, Grable, Alec Anderson, and SVP. That's your top 9. It gets a little tricky, though, because Anderson and SVP are both injured. And again, you can only designate 2 guys to put on IR to return. So maybe one of them get put on IR and designated to return. But then I don't know. And what do you do with Samuel? Maybe Samuel works his way back in. Maybe by week 2 of preseason, Samuel's playing in one of those spots go. But anyway, as things stand right now, like I said, this is my preseason projections that both of them will get back and they'll be on the 53-man roster to start. Going to the defensive side of the ball, 5 defensive edges. Groot, Bosa, Epinesa, Landon Jackson, Javon Sullivan, defensive tackle, ditto 5, Oliver, Jones, Sanders, Deion Walker, Dwayne Carter. I'm looking forward to seeing what Dwayne Carter does in the preseason. Dwayne Carter, TJ Sanders, Deion Walker. Those 3 guys, how they look in the preseason, I don't know that it determines and won't determine who makes the team and who doesn't, but it may determine how many snaps these guys get when the Bullets go live. Linebackers, I got 5. Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, Dorian Williams, Joe Andreessen, who is making this team, and I think Balin Spector getting hurt and then getting waived pretty much makes Joe Andreessen a lock. I got Shaq Thompson right now as the 5th linebacker, but look out for undrafted rookie Keontae Jenkins. And I did notice at practice on Thursday, Keontae Jenkins was getting reps ahead of Olafosio. So something to look out for. There's something about Keontae Jenkins, nothing crazy, but something I've liked about him at training camp. Cornerbacks. I got Bernard Trey, Teron Johnson, Dane Jackson, Cam Lewis, I'll put in there, and Dorian Strong. Safeties, I got 4, Rapp, Bishop, DeMar Hamlin, Jordan Hancock. You can change Hancock and Lewis. It doesn't matter. Basically, 10 defensive backs there. And then special teams, Tyler Bass, Brad Robbins, Reed Ferguson, of course. And again, Brandon Condrington, I think, makes this team as the primary returner. Here's the deal, though. That leaves you with 52. So I still got one more roster spot. Do I go 11 defensive backs, or do I go 6 wide receivers, or do I add an extra offensive lineman because both Anderson and SVP right now are hurt? Ultimately, after much deliberation, I ended up going with Jamarcus Ingram. Jamarcus Ingram is a proven, versatile guy, much like Cam Lewis, much like they hope Jordan Hancock's going to be. He's a versatile guy who can play multiple positions. He can play outside corner, play some slot, play a little bit of dime safety, and he's really, really good on special teams. And I don't think we've talked enough about special teams. So I got him making this team. All right, folks, we're going to get out of here. We're at almost the 40-minute mark. Again, I'm standing at a bench here with a busy street. I'm sure you've heard some motorcycles behind me if you're listening to this on the audio side. But I want to thank you very much for watching this, for listening. for following along with me here at Bill's training camp. I've tried and done a lot of things, or a lot of commitments, I should say, to getting to Rochester as much as I possibly could so that I can give you some firsthand observations. It's not about a trust thing. I learned so much from guys like Perino and Joe B and all these great reporters, Catherine Fitzgerald, who does an amazing job. But to be here, I think to be able to really have true insight, you need to see at least some practices. So I've tried really hard to move things around to make that happen. Anyway, I do really appreciate you. I don't know how this is going to look. I don't know how this is going to sound. I got 3 podcasting setups, folks. I got my home studio, which you see most days. I got another setup where when I do the bar shows at Imperial and Sunny Reds and places like that where, I got nice camera and mixers and I need an outlet and I need Wi-Fi to make that work. Right now, what you're seeing right now is my cell phone in a cage with this external lens and a wireless microphone that I'm holding here as a handheld. But that's it. That's the setup. The cool thing, especially once I get used to this and figure it out a little bit better, is I can record anywhere. I'm literally in a parking lot right now. I'm staring at a Dollar General and a Debbie Supply Incorporated hardware store. Never heard of that shit in my life. Tim Hortons is right off to my right. In fact, I had a little Timmy's before we got going, a gas station behind me. My point is I can record literally anywhere, and that's really cool. Anyway, I'm babbling. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, and I will be back. I don't know. I might do a live show Saturday after the Bills game. So be on the lookout for that. But if not, we'll definitely have a show with the biggest takeaways from that game on Sunday Night Live for the Monday podcast. Talk to you guys then.